to understand really Stalinism, one has to demystify, stop with this, especially in cultural circles, it's popular, this idolatry of the 20s. Golden era, formalists, futurists, relative freedom, everything. It's not as simple as that. Especially, you know, some very strange things were going on, which are in their ideological potentials, maybe in a way even more ominous than Stalinism. I've written about this in my books. You know, the so-called, I cannot call it otherwise, Gnostic Bolshevism. There was a strong movement, Trotsky even subscribed to it. I have quotes where he says, the next big task of Soviet power is to construct a new man. And he means it quite literally, biologically. A new man who would be much more rational. Ultimately, there was a very strong school in the 20s which even claimed sex is a bourgeois invention, basically. You know, this kind of, so what I'm saying is that 20s is a period to be rediscovered. We have to stop with this simple idolatry. Only in this way we can understand, strange as this may sound, maybe you will agree, the even relative popularity, relative because of his manipulation of, you know, when Stalin introduced socialist realism, people were glad finally we will get literature with normal suffering, crying people, enough of those stupid formalist experiments and so on and so on. So I think, would you agree, a new look is needed upon this glorified 20s?
You know, there was a revolution, and it was real. The revolution was widespread, mass participatory. It was the biggest revolution in world history to date. The Chinese Revolution would happen later, obviously.
Yeah.
And the belief, the hopes, the utopia, the building of a new world, the idea that the injustice and Tsarist oppression was severe. The Tsarist regime was unjust. The revolution was because of very good reasons. And thank God they overthrew the Tsarist regime. The revolution was fantastic, and it spawned a tremendous amount of dynamism and energy and craziness. Unfortunately, what happens in a revolution is the brilliant ideas don't take over. What takes over are the institutions. The shards of the old regime become the building blocks of the new regime. Protest movements, massing in the streets, forming communes, chiliastic songs, right? This doesn't get you a parliament, an independent judiciary, an impartial civil service, a free and open media space. These have to be built. Institutions have to be built. And instead of building free and open institutions during the 1920s, they build this dictatorship. And it's on purpose. It's not an accident. It's not something circumstances caused. It was something that Lenin wanted. And it was something that Lenin and Stalin and the rest of them were able to implant. Now, you can argue that they were doing it because they were trying to create a new world. They were trying to overcome the injustices of the old world. And that's correct. That was their motivation. They were not cynics. They were not just out for personal power. They were not just killing people for the sake of killing people in some type of sadistic orgy. This was a revolution to bring about a new world. The institutions to bring about the new world were in conflict with the goals. The methods and the core ideas of the reigning communists could never bring the freedom and the abundance and the happiness that the revolution had been about. So this is a very tragic story. And the 1920s are very tragic. And Russian history, unfortunately, is a tragic story. Time and again, you know, they try to build something which is better. And unfortunately, you know, they haven't made it yet. But the attempts were sincere, although misguided in my view. Now, so when you talk about the 1920s, the reason the 1920s look like a great period of pluralism and relative freedom is because the 1930s came after that. And if you were alive in the 20s, you weren't alive in the 30s. And so the 20s was a kind of golden era.
Yeah.
So I understand that psychologically. But your point about the 1920s being some open, free society that was going somewhere nice, that's obviously not true. You're absolutely correct that that was not the case.